Carter Cash here, and this is a special edition of Random Destinations. Now, I thought I was going to be taking a break, and I'd actually already started planning season 2. At least the first dozen or so episodes are planned. However, as part of doing that, I became concerned, as a lot of you probably are, about the COVID-19. Now, luckily I'm taking car trips, but it still doesn't make me feel any better about being in the prime group that will 1 out of 10 chance of dying if I get it, which then led me to think I really screwed up in season 1, because the one thing I never talked about was trip insurance. And we had it, and we had pretty good insurance and never had to use it. So I thought I would go ahead and do a mid-season special edition on travel insurance. So stand by, and that's what we're going to talk about. Okay, let's talk trip insurance. If you don't have it, you should have had it. If you try to get it now, it won't be as good as you would have gotten if you'd bought it 6 months ago. But if you're still planning and haven't booked a trip yet, now's the time to be thinking about it. So right off the top, there are 3 websites, and you can go to any one of the 3. I've looked at all of them. They all basically do the same thing. They're sort of insurance consolidators. The first one is called Insure My Trip. You'll find it at insuremytrip.com. That's the one that I happen to use. The other one is Travel Guard. They are also, matter of fact, they're very similar to Insure My Trip. So I'm sure it does the same thing. I played around a little bit with it. Appeared to work fine. And the last one is called TravelX. So go to any one of these 3. You put in a little bit of information, how old you are, where you're going, when you're going, how much the cruise or trip costs, and it'll spit out, I don't know, 18 or 20 different companies that will be more than happy to write you a travel insurance policy. Now, just remember, everybody loves insurance agents. I know I do. A lot of times my wife and I will invite them over just for fun and let them spiel on for a couple hours while we drink wine and beer and get drunk, and then tell them, no, we're not interested. And next to travel insurance agents, I think we all like lawyers. So when you look at these policies, you can tell it was written by insurance agents and lawyers. You have to really be picky about the fine detail, because the devil's in the details on these. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is a comprehensive package. That's one that pretty much lets you cancel for any reason whatsoever. Now, the biggest drawback to getting one of those is the first time you make a payment on your trip, you have, I think, 30 days, maybe 60 days, that you have to go ahead and sign up for it. And if you do during that period, your insurance will be a little cheaper. You can typically these websites will give you a low basic policy. They'll give you a mid-grade one, and then they'll give you a high-end one. So you can go through and pick one. The nice thing is it lets you, a comprehensive will let you cancel for any reason. Well, it used to, but it won't when it comes to COVID-19. Now, if you have a trip and already have your insurance, and it's a comprehensive plan, and you bought it before January 20th of this year, you probably can cancel that trip due to the COVID-19. You'll have to read the fine print, because everyone was written by a different lawyer and a different insurance company, say different things, but you at least have a chance. If you bought it after January 20th of this year, you don't have a chance, because at that point the government or CDC or whoever it was declared COVID-19 as a known risk. And once they did that, they basically assumed you knew the risk of getting this, and too bad, you can't cancel because of this. Now, also something that's interesting that I did not know is that fear of travel for any reason. You're afraid of flying, you're afraid of getting sick, you're afraid of anything. is not grounds to cancel a trip under a comprehensive policy. Now, I would have thought cancel for any reason meant any reason, but apparently it doesn't mean any reason. It means any one of a few certain ones, and fear of getting something is not one of the any's that are covered. So they kind of got you on that. I certainly didn't know that. And even if they didn't get you, it specifically says fear of sickness, epidemic, or pandemic is not covered. So if you have one of these policies and you're thinking about canceling it, go whip that baby out, start looking at the fine print, and see if you can cancel it and get your money back based on fear of. If not, you're pretty much going to have to ride it out. Now, here's the good news, assuming you have a good policy. If you travel during one of these situations like we're having today, and you do come down with it, you're probably covered if you carry medical insurance. And I'm going to talk more about that because there's some gotcha on medical insurance. But if you have trip insurance and medical insurance and you get sick, you are probably covered. Matter of fact, there's a good chance you're covered. And if you need medical evacuation back to the United States, you're probably also covered, again, if you bought the right package. So, and what could make a trip better than like the people on the Princess, what was it, Princess Diamond or Diamond Princess? Nothing nicer than being quarantined in an inside cabin for 26 days. But if that does happen to you, you'll be happy to know you're covered also under your insurance. They don't care if they lock you up for 26 days, as long as you have the right policy. Okay, so now let's talk about Medicare. If you're over 67 or 65, whatever it was, and you have Medicare, if you're like me, you absolutely love it. If you don't have it, well, it's something to look forward to. But here's the problem with Medicare that a lot of people don't know. Medicare stops as soon as you leave the continental United States. So you may have, that's assuming you just have basic Medicare. You're not covered once you leave the country. So if you're going to Europe on a cruise, let's hope you have a Medicare, Medigap or supplement policy. If you have a Medigap plan, specifically alphabet letters C, D, F, G, M, or N, it does cover foreign travel as a supplement to your Medicare, which will not cover, but it does take over as your primary insurance. We happen to have an old version of F, which is really a Cadillac plan, and it covers 100%. Most of the new plans, I think the new plan F now only covers 80% of your cost, but still that's better than nothing. Now, if you pick up trip insurance, in addition to that, it will work as a secondary insurance to your Medigap policy. So instead of Medicare picking up your bills, your Medigap policy will pick it up, and the travel insurance will pick up as supplemental. So that's what you want to try to get. And also you need medical evacuation, because to the best of my knowledge, Medicare does not cover medical evacuation. Now your supplemental Medigap policy probably does, but again, you need to look at that. But also it's easy and it's fairly cheap to add that to a travel insurance plan. So there's two must to have. Matter of fact, those are the two biggest reasons why I buy trip insurance. When we go on a trip, I basically paid everything off. If we can't go and we cancel it and I lose the 15 grand on the cruise, well, too bad. However, I won't travel without the medical emergency and the emergency evacuation. That is a must-have. What else? If you're not on Medicare, but you have an employee plan, you need to contact your human resources people and get the old book out and look at that, because quite a few private business medical plans also don't apply overseas. So you need to check that out and make sure that your plan's going to follow you. If not, go ahead and get a lot of medical insurance on your trip insurance, and I'd recommend doing that anyway. So that's going to depend on what your company's insurance says and who wrote it. And some of these policies, believe it or not, only work with American flag carriers, which I guess that means if you're on a Delta flight and you get sick, your employer's insurance will cover it. However, if you're on a Viking river cruise, that's not an American flag vessel, you're SOL. So make sure you look at that. You know, it's a shame that you have to do this, but everything is so damn crooked anymore that you've got to sit there and spend all kinds of time trying to outguess what the weasel agents and weasel lawyers have done to try to cheat you out of giving you what you think you've got. Okay, so now that you figured out that you need to get the medical evacuation and the medical insurance, how much do you really want? Well, that's up to you. I know for us, when we travel, I get at a minimum $125,000, preferably $150,000 in medical insurance. And on evacuation, you don't want one of these $25,000. You want $250,000 to $500,000, because if you're on a cruise ship in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean and you seriously have to be airlifted out of there, you're not going to do it for $25,000. It's probably going to cost you $100,000 to get flown someplace. And probably a good example of that was the people that were on that cruise last summer on the island when the volcano exploded. They got airlifted first to New Zealand, and then I think they went back to Australia to the hospitals. So that's a situation where if you had that trip insurance and the medical insurance and the emergency evacuation, you definitely would have had it save your life. So that's something else to think about. Now, what is all this going to cost? Well, surprisingly, I went out and when my wife and I went on the Viking cruise, I think we paid around $1,100 through General Global Insurance. That was the name of the company. I think we paid around $1,100 for our trip insurance, and that would have been for, well, the 7-day cruise. We were gone about 14 days, so that covered everything. When I went out and put the same information in today to the same website, we happened to use Insure My Trip, it came out roughly the same, between $800 and $1,900, with the average one that I probably would have picked today if we were doing it, coming out right at around $1,000. So the prices haven't gone up. However, you'll see lots of coronavirus isn't covered if you're doing this. So, you know, that's something that you need to do the research. So if you haven't done it and you've got a trip coming up and you're thinking, well, I have canceled for any reason, now go do some research and check it out, because you don't want to be caught off guard and you don't want to be surprised. I don't think anybody knows really what's going to happen. My wife and I are going on a 2 or 3 day road trip here to film the first, I think, 6 episodes. And I'm not particularly concerned about this first road trip. We're not going any place where there's lots of crowds and a lot of people, so I think it should be fine. However, in about a month, we are planning a 2-week trip to finish up season 2 episodes, and that one I am concerned about. That's going to take us down to Memphis and then to Baton Rouge and New Orleans and then over to Biloxi and up through rural Mississippi, and it's going to be a nice trip, but that's going to be one where there's lots of people. So the only thing I can say is if you're planning something like we are right now, make sure you book everything refundable, where you guaranteed you can cancel it up to 2 days before the trip, because basically that's the approach I'm taking. I booked everything. I have the agendas down. I know where we're going. I know what we're talking about. I know where we're stopping. But I haven't really paid for anything, and right up to about 3 days before we leave, I can go ahead and cancel it. I don't want to do that, but I think that's the only prudent thing to do. So if you've got $15,000 or $20,000 sunk into a cruise, and you bought the cheapest damn trip insurance that you could buy, thinking, well, I ain't going to need it, I'd go back and take a look at it. This is as close to a public service announcement as you're ever going to see on Random Destinations, because it's just not my style. But anyway, I felt obligated because I did leave that out, and that is something that I should have talked about in season 1. So let me know if you have any comments, or you find out something that I didn't know. I am by no means an expert in law. I'm not a rocket scientist, and if I was a rocket scientist, I would have been the rocket scientist that just blew up that test of the rocket that was going to go into space, Elon Musk or one of those billionaires. So I'm not an expert on any of this. I just tell you what I see and what my research says, but don't hold up your oh, you don't have a random destination card. I was going to say, don't hold your random destination card up and said, well, he told me it was okay, because that's going to get you about as much as a discount that it will get you. So until the start of season 2, that's it. I don't know if I even used a name, and if I did, I've forgotten it. So until season 2, be safe.